Okay, today we're going to talk about DNA structure. So DNA is an absolutely essential molecule which carries all of the instructions of how to make everything in your body, all of your different characteristics. So we're going to see the structure of DNA. So first of all, it's important to start by saying that DNA is a polymer. It's made up of these repeating units, and there's 4 different bases that form the code. The 4 different bases that form the code are A for adenine, it's C for cytosine, G for guanine, and T for thymine. So we have a sequence of bases, and depending upon the order of those bases, over a long stretch of DNA will be the code for a particular set of characteristics. For example, it could be how to make a particular enzyme, or it could be the gene, the particular code for eye colour. So, bases have these things called complementary pairs. A always goes with T. So adenine always goes with thymine. C always goes with guanine. So cytosine always goes with guanine. And so let me just finish these 2 as well. So as you can see from a DNA molecule, there are 2 different strands. And on each strand, that's where we find the bases. As you can see by these shapes, this is why we call them complementary. So they're complementary bases. If you see, G, for example, could not go with A. They wouldn't fit together. So that's why G and C always goes together and T and A always goes together. The way I remember it, just a real simple way of remembering it, is the curlier letters, C and G, go together, and the straighter letters, A and T, they go together. So, there's more information we need to know. So we can see that there's 2 strands to this DNA molecule. In the middle, the things that's holding them together are weak hydrogen bonds. So holding those bases together, therefore holding these 2 strands in place between each base pairing, are weak hydrogen bonds. Now the actual backbone of each of these strands is actually made of sugar phosphate. Sugar and phosphate. So we call it a sugar phosphate backbone. Okay. We now need to have a closer look. Now we've got the basic idea of these 2 DNA strands with their bases. We need to have a closer look at each individual unit. So we're going to have a look at kind of more in detail diagram right here. Because all of these different parts come together, and they are called nucleotides. A nucleotide consists of 3 things. It consists of a phosphate, a sugar, and a base. So if I was looking at this in more detail, it would look more like this. Here we have our phosphate. Here we have my sugar. So there's a phosphate. That's the sugar. And that there is the base. Remember the 4 different bases, A, C, G, and T. So this is called a nucleotide. Now, if we see the sugar phosphate backbone, this would just mean another nucleotide would go underneath with the next base. So this one with cytosine, then another nucleotide underneath, and so on and so forth. It's repeating units, so it's called a polymer. Now, this only gives us part of the picture because this is in 2 dimensions. When we look at DNA in 3 dimensions, it forms this twisted ladder shape, which we call a double helix. A double helix. And I've got a model of that to show you what it looks like. So, here's a 3D structure to show DNA. As you can see, these things in the middle, the green, yellow, red and blue, they are the bases. These red and purple things around the outside are our sugar and phosphate backbone. So we could see, in reality, DNA has that twisted ladder shape, and that twisted ladder shape is a double helix shape. We could see that there's 2 strands and they wind round each other like this. Remember, between the bases, so for example here, between the bases, what keeps them held together are weak hydrogen bonds. So here's just a three-dimensional way of viewing that. So the last thing we need to say or talk about is what is a gene. So a gene is a section of DNA which codes for a particular protein. So for example, in reality it would be much longer, but let's say it would be this sequence here, a particular sequence of bases. If we have that sequence right there, a section of DNA like this could be the information, for example, for eye colour. So that section there would be the gene for eye colour, because it provides us with the code that we need in order to tell us that we're going to have blue eyes or brown eyes. So that is a whistle-stop tour of DNA structure. I hope it's been useful.